Woo.
Woo.
Awesome. All right. Welcome everyone to Trans Talks. I feel so like regal being like, I am your host, Parker. But like, that's the vibe. And to be fair, I am quite literally ethereal. So I feel like that adds up. So this weekend we're talking with the illustrious, the wonderful, the absolutely, I'm trying to think of a word to describe how fantastic you are, and I'm coming up short. The incomparable Sci Fi. Sci Fi, would you like to introduce yourself? Maybe say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I go by the name Sci Fi. I am a DJ and a rapper and a promoter based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am a resident DJ at a club called Acadia, at which I throw a party called Adventures in Spacetime. And I was going to say that makes me totally get where you're coming from, like being like, I am the host and doing like the... because it's awkward the first couple times I have to get up there and be like, welcome to the party, and like, here's the rules. And,
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's fantastic. I do or at the very least, back before, the Panda Express, I did a lot of, before the Pandora's box, I did a lot of I was kind of known for like hosting like parties and like, but not like ragers or anything. Like I would like decorate like an archaic, decrepit house, all 3 stories.
Nice.
Of it, like host like Addams Family type soirees and like that.
Hell yeah.
But like I gotta get back into the digital stuff because I've also been on like a slight hiatus, I guess, for like the last 3 weeks. So like we're vibing, we're good, and like that sounds amazing. Honestly, if I'm ever in the area, I would absolutely love to come out. And yeah, okay, so we're just gonna chill, we're just gonna vibe, we're just gonna talk. I've got a couple of questions for you. I've got a decent amount of questions for you, but like I'll slide them in there real like vibing like so that it doesn't seem too much like you're under the hot spot. I feel like the best sorts of talks happen when they are held like conversations, and less when they're, me grilling you with like a spotlight under your face, like, hey,
what's the deal?
Yeah, exactly. What's your relationship with your mother? Like that's like that's not exactly the vibe that we're going for. So and your pronouns are she, they, correct?
Yes.
Perfect.
Should have thrown that in there.
Wonderful. My pronouns are they, them. I identify as non-binary and I identify as a pain in the ass, but in terms of gender, in a way that people can understand. I identify
right.
non-binary. So let's see here. So my first like thing for you, the thing that's like gripped my attention the most once Sammy was like, oh, you're going to be, interviewing Sci-Fi. I was like, oh, interesting. So my question for you is, why the name Sci-Fi? Like, I love it so much. I am a fantasy writer and incorporate that into all aspects of like all of my polymath, like BS and nonsense. And I am such a huge fan. Like, I've got like 11 names that various people call me, but like, I'm such a big fan of like.
Thank you.
Yeah. So like, tell me about that if you're comfortable with that, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. So, God, I must have been 15 or 16, I think, when I was first called that. It was pretty like early in my transition, and I was kind of like finally getting used to my name. And I remember being at my friend's place, like in the basement or whatever, just like hanging out with her. And I can't remember how it came about, but she asked if she could call me that as like a nickname. So then like however many odd years later, when I like started making music and really starting to try to do something with the art that I was creating, that for whatever reason, that was the first memory that popped back into my head. was her like asking if she could call me Sci Fi.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh hell yeah, because the first song I ever made had this very like video gamey, like kind of real like electro like wavy kind of feel to it, and so I was just like, oh, this is kind of like spot on for the kind of thing that I'm like experimenting with right now, and it has just kind of worked out.
That's amazing. Oh my God, no, I love that. I absolutely adore that. I love it when names just like I'm a big like I mentioned, I'm a writer. I'm a big fan of just like naming like people and things and places and nouns, and I just love it when like names that like just kind of like stick with you from your past kind of crop back up in different ways.
Yeah.
My handle nowadays is Humble Tortoise, which is how like folks on like TikTok and Instagram and like Discord know me. And it's absolutely wonderful. And people are like, what's up with tortoises? And I was like, well, it just popped back into my head because of this hilarious thing that happened like 6-7 years ago. But I love how names always just like, you rediscover them, but it's really more just like, hey, like they knock on your door at a certain point in your life and they're like, hey, you can use me now. This is what I was here for.
Right. Yeah.
That is such a vibe. Oh God. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And how long have you been like making music? Or, I mean, you could say since you came out of the womb and I would believe you.
Yeah.
Answer, but like,
yeah, I've been making music for a really long, or I've been involved in music, I'll say, for a really long time. I started playing instruments when I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. I started learning how to play guitar and bass, and I got a little older, and I went to a new school and I got to learn how to play drums because we had like the orchestra and like the marching band or whatever, and that eventually evolved because I was like really super emo.
yes.
As like a late elementary school, middle school, high schooler.
Your entire like, yeah, for like a year or so when
it took me a little bit to get there, but because I have an older brother who's like I think 3 or 4 years older than I am, so he was like in middle school already, like listening to like emo music actively. So I was just like in my like big brother awe or whatever of him, just being like, this music's awesome. But being like in the 5th or 6th grade and like listening to Slipknot is really, really weird for other kids.
Trust me, I was listening to like Tool in a Perfect Circle in like middle school. Like I have this distinct memory of someone in my school, like we were all in like the girls' locker room or something, and I was listening to this really, really, really intense breakdown of a Tool song, but it was specifically the part where Maynard was like screaming, and it was so good. It was making my little ADHD like stimmy brain go like burr. I was like, this is so good. And then one of the girls comes up to me and she was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, hey, we never really talked to you. Like, what are you listening to? And she takes one of the headphones out of my ear and she puts it in at the most like intense, odd, demonic sounding part. And she like listens to it for 4 seconds and then she just puts it back in my ear. She's like, nice. And then she leaves. And that was the last time anyone ever did that.
That's amazing. I had an experience kind of similar to that, walking into school and somebody like trying to get my attention. I had my headphones on, but because I was like young and angry, they were up really loud. Yeah. So, what was I listening to? I was probably listening to like Suicide Silence or something, or like the Black Dahlia Murder. And I was like 7th or 8th grade, and somebody was just like tap me on the shoulder, and I was just like, what's good? And they were just like, we can hear it.
That still actually happens to me all the time. Like, I'll be at work, I'll be like on the subway, I'll be, buying a bagel from a man in a trench coat behind a Denny's, who does not work for the Denny's, and they'll be like, hey, we can hear your music. And I'm like, oh, that explains all the stares I'm getting.
Right.
So, that's a complete and utter vibe.
I was like, oh, this is just my morning routine, son. I'm sorry.
Literally, it's like, yeah, I'm meditating. Thank you, Chadley. So speaking of music and like influences, like, what do you think is the music that influences you like as a person the most, and what do you think are the forms of art that influence you the most, like as an artist? Because I feel like sometimes those are separate things, The
art that I feel like influences me most as a person. Well, like music just influences like everything about me. It always has.
Yeah.
I'm currently like working on a new project right now. And as a part of that, I'm kind of like re-exploring my relationship with music throughout different periods of my life. And just kind of thinking back on that exact thing, actually. I feel like a lot of the music that influences me as a person is stuff I've been listening to or started listening to at very either vulnerable or like impactful stages in my life. So I remember being really young and being with my brother and discovering Coheed and Cambria, which was just like one of the most like mind-boggling things ever. Like him having to explain to me what like a concept project is in relation to like music, and being like, well, because he had a buddy of his that had a bunch of the comics that went with the music and stuff, and he was like, so here, explaining to me, he's like, here's the deal, like there's the music and it's telling a story, and there's like comics that like tell the same story but like visual. And I was just like, that's crazy, that's insane to me. Or like in middle school, going into high school, I want to say, trying to like shed that very emo, like dark depression, like part of me, and trying to find something new to like center myself around in that way. And like discovering the 1975, because chocolate had become really, really big that same summer. And I remember like aesthetics do play a role in what influences me, but a lot of the time I get those aesthetics from stuff I view in music. So it still kind of like loops back around. I remember seeing the video for their song Robbers and seeing the singer Matt Healy like standing on a poolside, on like an abandoned poolside with like the wind blowing, and he's wearing this like rose pattern blouse that's just like flowing in the wind or whatever. There's just something very like intriguing about that to me. The sort of and like along with the way like the audio like made me feel, it was very like impactful in that way, where I was just like, that feels like something that feels like it should be a part of me. And so it was, and I got really, really into like flowers and like floral prints, and that was like very impactful in its own way. So there's a lot of like music that is sort of the root of like what influences me as a person, that kind of like branches off into a lot of different things. What influences me as an artist is probably a bunch of that same stuff. It's the stuff that like moves me as a person. I, like I said, Coheed in the 1975, also In Love with a Ghost, and Snail's House are also like a couple producers that I just absolutely adore. That really, really like influence my music. But there's also, yeah, it just spans all over like music I've heard at different like impactful moments in my life. Lately, I've been revisiting one of my favorite hip hop records of all time, "The Many Faces of Oliver Hart" or "How I Won the Right to Think" by Idea.
Oh, I've never even indulged in that, but like just
It's
the title
great.
so captivating. Yeah.
Because the title is based on Dr. Strangelove.
That. Yeah.
The double title thing.
Yeah.
And it's so captivating because it was another one of those things. It was another one of those like storytelling albums that really shifted the way that I thought about not only music but thought about things in my life. There's a song on there called "How Much Do You Pay," in which Idea describes meeting a bucket drummer outside First Avenue and having this conversation with him. You know, he kind of describes a man like he used to be a lawyer and now, you know, he's just like sitting on the corner, like beating a bucket. And I wonder like how I got here and like, you know, if something was wrong and blah, 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 blah. And essentially the conversation just boils down to like the guy beating the bucket telling him is just like, what I do sitting here beating a bucket playing for these people who give me tips is no more important than what you do in a club or a venue spitting rhymes for people on a stage. The only difference is I don't think I'm important.
Oh, that destruction of someone else's ego is just feeding my soul.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's oh god, that is so
the chorus bit to that song is probably my favorite part because I think it was something that he realized, like the gentleman said to him. He says, "Make money and die. That's the American way."
God, I've been on an anti-capitalist vibe lately, so ow, that's speaking to my soul. Oh god, yeah.
He's just like, what you do isn't any more important than me beating a bucket. It's just the difference is I don't think I'm important for it.
Yeah, it's combating ego is so necessary when you're an artist, you know, like keeping that bit of just like, you know, I feel like keeping grounded, I guess, is a good way to put it, but it's I mean, it's, you know, that's so true because how, like, there's so many, like, folks that have influenced people who were just, like, buskers, who were just vibing, like, buskers who perform.
Yeah.
And, like, sometimes those are the same people that are, like I was a busker for years, but I was also at the same time, like, playing shows at the Apollo, you know? And that wasn't, like, a ego thing or, like, a keeping me humble thing. I was just, like, I'm just going to play where I play, you know? But, like, sometimes there are people that exclusively play, like, bigger theaters, and sometimes there are folks that exclusively are, like, buskers or play, like, smaller venues. And, yeah, no, that's... I can see why a project like that would be so influential, because, like...
yeah, because I was like 15 when I heard that record for the first time all the way through. So I was, it was mind shattering. Just like, especially because in the track right before that, it's called Weird Side, and that's when I really, really tried really super hard to learn the lyrics to, because he has an absolutely incredible sense of wordplay and delivery on that song, and that's just was so captivating to me. And especially just because like he's from here, he's from Minnesota, and so like a lot of the stuff that he talks about and describes is like stuff that I see still when I like ride around the city. So it's interesting to like think about the way he saw things.
Yeah.
You know, and think about how other people see the exact same things that I'm looking at.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. When I was like my largest influence, generally speaking, is My Chemical Romance. And yeah, I know it's like, they've got the chip black nails and like the hair over the eye, etc. But like there's a reason the band is so popular still. It's because they're wonderful, and because Gerard Way knows what they're doing. You know, Frank Iero, like just so many. The epicenter.
What a dick.
So many.
Frank Iero.
Oh God! Listen,
I love watching him be a dick to people on Twitter. It's one of my great joys in life.
Listen, I have not stopped loving that man since I was like 15 years old. It is so funny because like I fell out of my sort of like hyper focus, and then like as soon as the pandemic started and I actually had time to like think of the things that I enjoy again, I was on his Twitter and I was like, shit, it's back. I'm back. Here it is. Ain't nobody go nowhere. It was just the funniest thing. But yeah, no, and I love, like, my thing is I so enjoy like just art that bleeds into other art, especially like individually as an artist, and like influences like you know, albums like Danger Days, The True Lives of the Fabulous Killjoys, for example, right?
Yeah.
Like My Chemical Romance. Like there's an entire comic series that I have right here that like Gerard like created that was attached to it, attached to the album. Like, and the album was kind of like a prequel to the whole thing, and like and that like just the ways in which comics and like music influence each other, and the ways in which like images and like words like stick in your mind at like such a young age, and then continue to influence not only like who you are as an artist, but like the core of your being, you know, reshape that in such a wonderful and like positive way. Like, yeah, no, I totally get what you mean by that, because when I heard it, was just the entirety of the vibes for like MCR when I was younger, it just, I have not gotten unstuck from being absolutely head over heels for every aspect of that band, the construction, the concepts.
Yeah.
Like I'm a really, really big person for concepts. And like for me as a musician as well, like that also like bleeds a lot into my stuff. A little bit too much, because that means it takes me longer to finish projects. Because when I write, I'm a very similar way where I'm like, you know, I do fantasy, and I've got this one series that I've been working on for a while, you know, and like I've spent like at one point I spent like 6 months like coming up with like the molecular construction of why the soil in this imaginary continent that I made was magnetic, so they could build floating benches instead of having to disrupt the earth, you know, like
right.
Yeah, like and that very much ends up coming out when I'm doing music as well, but specifically full projects. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this song bleeds into that, and like this is that narrative, and that, you know, it's like, you know, that meme where it's I think it's an Always Sunny meme where he's got like the cigarette in his mouth and like a murder board behind him. Yeah, like that's me when I'm working on like anything.
That's how it feels for me, but I wish I had the capacity to actually like put one together, because I think it would make my life way easier.
Yeah. It kind of does, like for the way that I have ADHD, so like for me to be able to look at something and be like there, like physically it works for me. I always like a few months ago I put up or I guess like a year ago now, I put up a murder board in my house, like over my desk at my last apartment, and like now I'm just like every single time I have a desk, I need to have one, because it just like, if you ever get around to it, you absolutely should like.
I was gonna say I'm gonna be moving soon. When I get my new place, I think I'm gonna put one up. Okay. The person I'm moving in with is also a musician, so I'm just like, I'm sure they won't mind.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you're gonna be like chilling and like vibing. And I'm also moving soon, and my roommate is like my high school best friend, and she's also a musician. So
nice.
Yeah.
But I totally get what you mean about like the blending together, like especially for me as like a DJ as well. Where like a whole nother part of my craft is figuring out how music bleeds together.
Yeah.
It's really, really hard not to try to do that in my music, to just like allow things to end as they are and be their own solid piece.
That's, yeah, I imagine that like being a rapper and a DJ must be so interesting and like so fun to like use the knowledge of one in the practice and like layout of another, you know, like that must be so dope.
It's great because I'm like particularly like analytical I like to make jokes to my girlfriend about how I love to be like the robot autistic. Just because that's how I am about a lot of stuff. I'm very like cause and effect about certain types of things in my life. And so I really, really love being incredibly analytical about the way that I like break down the music that I listen to, and how I consume music and how that plays into the way that I DJ. So when I like feel like I'm getting bored of a certain way that I'm writing, I'll start studying songs that I'm listening to, or I'll start studying like specific artists that I'm like having fascinations with to try and create in the way that I consume. But not so much that it's like derivative, more so like inspired. Particularly right now, I've been listening to like Rhymes Like Dimes by MF Doom. That's what I've been studying for a good little while now. Particularly from like an instrumental point of view, because that instrumental's funky as shit. I love it. It's so fun. And he talks about Billy Blanks. So points for Doom. Just that's such a specific memory. Just like Billy Blanks at 4:30 in the morning, killing the Tybo on the TV.
Nice.
I've also been not only nostalgia listening, but like studying a lot of Lily Allen's like early work. A lot of her like first record I've been listening back on like nostalgically, and like listening back on it as like the kind of person I am now. Like being that kind of analytical person I am now, particularly LDN is a song that I've just been like circling around for a while. Just because something about its style and the way that it's written, because I know it's inspired by a poem. I can't remember what poem, but I know it's inspired by a poem. But I've always been very fascinated by the contradiction of like the happy-go-lucky feeling or perception of content, but then the content itself not actually being that.
And Lily Allen is such a great example of that, like, you know, the pop or like cheery pop or just cheery vibes, like
bubblegum pop that like
exactly of like
is at the same time very like subversive.
But you know, like I'm talking about like an apocalypse. You know, like I absolutely love those vibes, and Lily Allen's definitely like a great example of that as well.
Especially because like her first record has so many like really incredible jazz samples.
Yeah, I love listening to like I also do this thing, like the thing where I'll revisit things, and like when I'm about to start on a project myself, like when I'm about to start on a music project, like before I released a EP Halloween of last year, and I was studying synths because I was working with like digital instruments by myself for the first time, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna study basically the entire discography of Nine Inch Nails because Trent Reznor is like insane with that. And also I was studying a lot of like LCD sound system as well, because like, again, like amazing usage of synths. And like I also love like going into like an artist's like earliest stuff or like earlier stuff and just like exploring what exactly they were like trying to connect to, or like what divine concepts they had, you know, because like sometimes I feel like whether or not it's something that like the audio quality is rougher than what their stuff is now, or whether or not it's just like the concepts were different. Like I love that, like I love how sometimes like messy and how sometimes like unpolished it can be, even if it sounds perfect, even if it sounds wonderful. You know, over time, obviously, like artists develop like a level of polish, I would hope. You know, but like that's just natural when you work at something for a hot second. Like that's what usually ends up happening. And I love like kind of getting into like the broken glass of what an artist's like original few like published works were.
Yeah.
You know, because it makes me feel like there's a more, I think, sometimes a more direct and like, you know, it's like the sort of plexiglass or bulletproof glass between like listener and like artist is like dissolving when you're listening to someone's like earliest stuff, you know.
Yeah.
The concepts that they're exploring, yeah.
And especially to like look back on someone's earliest work and kind of see what their foundation was.
Yeah.
Because like listening to her early work definitely like makes you kind of look at the stuff she made in the years after that and be like, you know what, this makes perfect sense. Because that first album is very like reggae inspired and very like jazz inspired and you know, different kind of stuff like that. And it was very like impactful in that way too, because a lot of those sounds were coming from like the immigrants that populated the UK. You know, a lot of people coming from the Caribbean via the Atlantic slave trade. And so it's interesting to see her like utilize the sounds of, you know, the sounds that like people brought there. But then, you know, on the next record and the record after that, it's very like different, but like rooted in all the same stuff. Where it's sort of more like directly like pop on the second record. Still with some like weird shit in there. I know she like, what song? Not Fair has like a weird like country western sample in it. Trying to think of what else. Oh,
still here. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, what else was there? There was that had a really weird country western sample in it. There was, yeah, it was very much like straightforward pop, in my opinion, with just like some random like weird things sprinkled in there. But yeah, it felt like much more like straightforward like pop of the era, but still doing her very like Lily Allen like subversive like content kind of thing. Straight off the bat on the record too, I'm pretty sure the first song on that record is about like people popping pills. And I know there's a song on there about like there's a song on there about like God, and about how like people fight and die in the name of God, and well, you know, that being like a direct contradiction of like the things that people believe about the concept of God. Yeah, there's a whole lot of weird, like really interesting stuff on there. It just, I think altogether I'm very captivated by a good story. And I think that applies pretty heavily through like every medium of art that I consume. A good story is good no matter what context you put it in.
Yeah, I feel that.
I just finished, me and my partner just finished the first season of a TV show called Why Women Kill.
I apologize.
Yeah, you're good.
I'm so sorry. I ordered food before.
All good.
Yeah, I was trying to treat myself, but no, you were saying. I apologize.
I'm always really, really captivated by a good story,
Mhm.
no matter what like context it's put in. I love learning about like various types of like histories, because I like storytelling. I like learning it. Storytelling was just like something that was made to be like incredibly valuable to me as
Yeah.
as a young person who like I had a job in the Science Museum of Minnesota from the time I was like 13 or 14 until I was like almost 20.
Wow.
Um,
It's a long time to.
and as a part of like the programs that I was in there, uh, they taught us about the value of storytelling. And they were like, one of the most important things in human history is the ability to relay stories.
Mhm.
Um, but they're also incredibly dangerous in that way because you need to think about who is telling these stories and who are they telling these stories to. Um, who are the stories about? Why are these people telling these stories when they're telling them? Uh, and so it's just the ability to tell a good story and to have um, things that connect with me on that level have always been really, really important. Like in the music I consume, in the TV shows and things that I watch, in the other sort of different, like very special interesty, like kind of things that I get myself into.
Mhm.
Uh, I just love learning about the stories of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally get that. Like at the end of the day, the thing that I'm, regardless of like what the media is or like the art style is that I'm consuming, like I'm really just like in it for like the root of the narrative, like the meat of like what exactly the story is.
Yeah.
So no, I totally get that. Um, yeah. Okay, so I've got a couple more questions for you. I just realized what time it is, so we should probably wrap up soon before
Oh,
Sammy
right.
erupts from the heavens and smites me. No, she'll be fine. Okay, so we're gonna do a sort of, I guess, speed round, and then
Cool. Ah.
wrap up in a bit. Twins. Okay, so let's see here. Um, Okay. I guess and some of these are generic questions because I am at my heart a basic bitch. I will be getting pumpkin spice next week. And some of them are slightly less generic. So I hear a lot about like how explorative you are and like the deep dive that you do into like other bodies of work and things like that. What would you personally like to explore more of in your art, whether as a DJ or a rapper?
Um, I'm exploring what I want to explore as a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
I had bought a book recently when I was on vacation in New Orleans. I bought a book called DJ Culture, uh, and it is everything I could have hoped for it to be. It is sort of just like a very like analytical deep dive into like the history of like DJing and like the art of mixing music and sort of like a cultural examination of like the impact of like a DJ as like an artist and in
Yeah,
like an influencer of culture on some level.
that's so fun.
Uh, so I'm excited to explore more of that culture from that perspective, as opposed to just like the art of like DJing hip hop specifically. Um, musically, I'm looking to break out of the more like electronically based sound that I had established for myself on my first project. Like there's obviously going to be elements in it of the music that I create forever, but um I kind of want to break out of the mold I made for myself. That's what I'm trying to do. What I hope to do.
Nice, nice. Is there any particular way, or you're just kind of like throwing things at the wall right now and like
A
seeing?
little bit throwing things at the wall. like I described, like examining the music that I've been listening to has been helping a lot. So listening to stuff like Lily Allen and MF Doom and like Earl Sweatshirt and stuff like that has really been helping a lot. There's also a playlist I really, really love, created by Estelle Caswell from Vox, because she does a series on that network called Earworm. There's a whole episode that she has about what is it? It's the Quiet Storm, which is like sexy late night radio for Black Americans.
Lots of like early 2000s R&B. Lots of folks with their like
lots of like 70s and 80s art.
Like the
Roberta Flack and like
okay.
There's like Roberta Flack and D'Angelo and Teddy Pendergrass and
okay.
So I've also been like listening to a lot of that and seeing all the different ways that people have found ways to express desire and passion.
Ooh, interesting.
Just because there's so many different ways people have done it, even in the different ways, like Roberta Flack's original version of "Feel Like Making Love" versus D'Angelo's neo soul version of "Feel Like Making Love." Just even those different interpretations is just like, Roberta Flack's is very like, I feel like I should be wearing like very loose, like wispy clothes, and like it's very like soft and like intimate or whatever. But D'Angelo's feels like, D'Angelo's feels like backseat fucking. Like, and so it's so interesting to examine those like different ways that people seem to express how they experience desire.
And like, and also like I also love seeing, like I do a similar thing, I think, sometimes consciously and sometimes unconsciously, where I'll like go into a concept and like look at all the different ways that people will like navigate or express or describe things. And like, especially for like passion, like there are so many different ways to do it, and there's so many, it's something that I think in music is discussed like so often, but only sometimes, for me at the very least, like only sometimes in what is popular will it be discussed in a way that feels like truly intimate and less plastic, I guess,
Yeah.
Okay, next question. How do you think, so I know you're in Minnesota. Well, I don't know you're in Minnesota. You could be in like Texas right now, but so you've mentioned Minnesota quite a bit. So how do you think your environment has influenced your art and music, and or how do you think it's limited your art and music?
Entirely. The last year and a half, 2 years here has been rough. Uprising started here, and I spent 2 weeks straight sleeping maybe 2 or 3 hours a night between shifts of monitoring live streams and verifying information between social media platforms and on the ground respondents. COVID taking away my ability to even practice my craft. And not only that, we had a lot of venues shut down here. And so the few that are left, we're trying to claim for ourselves, particularly in a part of town called Cedar Riverside. It's in South Minneapolis, near the University of Minnesota. And there's a couple clubs over there that managed to stay open through the harder parts of the pandemic and uprising. The one that I am the resident DJ at, Acadia, and then down the street from there is a wonderful little place called Part Wolf. where a friend of mine throws a lot of like goth events. They throw a lot of it's like goth, like like techno, kind of like very niche stuff, and so people like to make jokes about like Part Wolf is the new gay bar, and I'm like, you're absolutely right, it is.
I mean, considering the history of subcultures, I'm surprised that wasn't like the vibe to begin with.
Yeah.
But, all subcultures are gay. Yes, I
and like and like riding around the city now, like post uprising. There's such a different feeling in the air.
Yeah.
Not that there wasn't always tension here,
but it's different.
But it's so different now. You know, I drive by the burnt out remains of the 3rd precinct at least once a week.
Oh God, yeah.
I go down Lake Street pretty often, which is the part of town that was probably most heavily hit during the uprising. And yeah, there's just reminders everywhere of what happened here. And so my like immediate environment has really intensely impacted the way that I have a relationship with my art. Just because, you know, we don't have a lot of venues anymore, and so it's up to people like me and up to people like my friend Christian and up to us like young Black, queer, trans people to take these spaces for ourselves, to take what space there is left and make it ours. Because we need places to feel safe.
Yeah. And safe spaces like are so important, especially in the, I mean, I'm sure I don't need to tell you, you just, you know, it was
just a thing of like, all of us find different ways of being able to support our communities. Some people are driven by organizing. Some people are driven by mutual aid. Some people, like myself, I know personally for me, the best way that I know how to provide for community is through entertainment.
Yeah.
Because we need to feel like we can get away from shit every now and again too. And that's what I'm perfect at. That's why I like my Twitter and I don't know if my IG is still that, but I know my Twitter is still, if you read like the header or whatever, it's a sci-fi queen of escapism.
Ooh. As somebody who uses that as a coping mechanism, that's a vibe.
And that's the whole thing, is that like, I kind of do escapist shit professionally.
Yeah.
I create environments that allow people to be able to step out of their troubles.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. That's something like, as well with my own work, I think do that by kind of like focusing on doing the opposite for me. Like I'll pinpoint feelings. Like I'll make concepts that sort of seem like escapism, but the way that I do fantasy and art is that I'll like focus on really, really specific, intense feelings that maybe people want to run away from, and kind of like, at least for me, it's therapeutic when I'm like creating music, you know, because I'll be like, oh, here's this like fantastical concept. But then like the deeper you go into like every single aspect of it, the more that you're like, oh, I'm not actually, this isn't what was advertised. I'm not actually escaping this. I'm actually just confronting it from a way that like allows me to get lost in it, but safely, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like doing what I get to do and promoting and curating shows at Acadia allows me to make sure that my community, that my specifically niche community of like other DJs and performers that I know are taken care of.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I totally get that. And like,
then I get to bring my people in. I get to say like, you know, I have DJs that I'm real close with that have kids, that have like young children. And so I'll try to contract them and be like, I want you to come down, do this gig, do all this stuff. I'll let you play whatever slot you want, because I know that like I was just like my slot's always my slot, but I'll let you take whatever slot other than that, just because I know like sometimes you can get here early or whatever. Sometimes you want to get home early or like whatever you need,
Yeah. Yeah. I like spaces specifically for like music and art are like such a a temple and such a spiritual gathering place, especially in times of duress and especially for like queer communities of color, and just communities in general, and it's like for me, like also when I'm like running soirees or when I'm like facilitating even just workshops and things like that, when I am the person who's like responsible for the gathering, like it is that weight that is lifted off my shoulders, knowing that like the folks that I care about and the folks that care about the folks that I care about are like okay, in some capacity, like for some amount of time, like it's a reassurance, I think, on both ends. Also, just looked at the time. Okay, so all right, so let's see here. Sammy always does a few. Oh, okay. Well, I've added a question in here. So we're just gonna do a rapid sort of like A or B sort of thing. Okay. Pizza or pasta?
Pasta.
Okay. Okay. Cats or dogs?
Cats. I'm looking at the cat right now. He's so cute.
I should have known. There's so much Hello Kitty behind you. I should have.
My girlfriend is the most adorable Hello Kitty-esque person to ever exist. She also collects squishmallows. There are over 100 in this apartment.
I absolutely love those. I don't collect mallows, but I do collect squishables.
Yes!
I love squishables to death.
That one is somewhere in this apartment. I know it is.
Twins! His name is Frankincense Julian Murr. Like, cause vibes.
She just got me this today.
That is the best looking. Is that a duck? Oh my god.
His dumb little beak.
I was gonna, yeah. Oh, what a baby.
His name is Avery.
Oh god, that is so smart.
Because they come with little tags. They have like names and stories.
Oh my god. I used to collect, there were like ugly dolls and like Skull-animals. And like I used to just like love the little stories and the names that came with them, as well. I'm an avid collector of. There's an octopus right there that's trying to escape its mortal coil, but but yeah, I'm an avid collector of stuffed animals as well. Next thing, would you rather have? I didn't plan this one. Why? I have a whole thing of things right here. Would you rather eat one food for the rest of your life or listen to one album for the rest of your life?
Ooh.
I just came up with that, but like that's a really good question. I'm not even gonna be able to answer that, but like yeah.
I'd probably go with one album. Specifically from like an autistic like sensory point of view, where like there are certain flavors I just like really can't do because they just like become too much if I have enough of it in one sitting. Where like I know people that really, really love like when we eat like Chinese food or whatever, they'll get like peanut butter noodles or whatever, and I'm like, I can't fucking do peanut butter. It's one of those flavors that just like if I eat a whole bowl of peanut butter noodles, I'm only gonna taste the peanut butter, and that's too much for me.
No, that's completely valid. I think I want to make an amendment for that question and be like, would you listen to one like artist all the time or like one food group? But like, yeah, no, with that constriction, that's a good answer. Okay. And Sammy always like ends, I believe, or like inserts them into the conversation with these like three things. So first question, what words, if you could describe yourself in like, I'm going to give you 2 words. I feel like 3 words is too expansive. I want you to feel the pressure. Like, what's your relationship with your mother? No, but no. So if you had to describe yourself, we'll do 2 words. But if you had to describe yourself with like 2 words, what would they be?
Airhead.
Fair.
I
love that for you.
I would probably describe myself as a hopeful airhead.
Oh, okay. Like, okay, I like that. Like optimistic, like bimbo Lydia Martin.
Just a little lost.
Okay, no, that's I aspire to be that.
I love Jennifer Coolidge.
A hot dog.
What a
Okay, second question. What gives you gender euphoria? I'm getting like floral vibes from you. What do you euphoria?
I started wearing flare pants this year. That's been doing a lot for me.
Oh, I love that for you.
I love it. Mostly because I'm built like Gumby. So flare pants make my butt look really good, but they also make my legs look as long as they are. And it hides the fact that my feet are big because the pants are big. So it makes me feel really, really good. It makes me feel like, makes me feel, because I'm kind of butch, so it's weird. So like wearing flare pants, but also wearing like a band tee, makes me feel very like 70s punk rocker and like classic like rock and roller at some points.
Oh, I love that for you. This is the most cohesive my aesthetic will ever look, but generally speaking, I'm gonna wear like antlers and a corset and like a studded belt and like these big just like step on me like goth boots all in the same outfit, and then my face will just be like a massive array of like all different sorts of makeup, like from day to day. So like I totally get what you mean by that, like by those like specific vibes.
Me and my girlfriend are that contrasting image of like the girl that wears like all pink and the girl that wears like all black.
Oh my god, I love that. Honestly, that's kind of what the vibes are with like me and like my partners as well. And even like my best friend is like very like Hello Kitty, very like generally speaking, she's more of like a pastel goth when she gets like dressed up, but for day to day it's just like Hello Kitty, like light pink clouds, like, oh, look at the stars, you know.
Because my girlfriend's really into like the fairy Kai stuff, so she has a lot of like very like powder pink like dresses, and she's really into like why can I not remember it off the top of my head now? Some fashion line I can't remember off the top of my head, but similar kind of thing where I'm very much like rooted in my like Midwest punk. You know, kind of roots or whatever, but she's, which is so funny because our personalities are very much the opposite. Where she like dresses like a princess but like acts like a bro.
Oh, I love that.
And I like dress like I'm gonna hurt people, but I like really love soft stuff, and I love to be like cozy, and comfortable, and secure.
No, I totally get that. I always love it when there's that like contrasting edge and like element to like aesthetic and personality, especially in like dynamics. And last question, Sammy assigned, what cis nonsense are you sick of? We could stay here for another hour and 20 minutes with that question, but
this specifically is an intersectional cis nonsense thing. When white dudes call me brother.
I love the way that you said that too. You were just like very Hulk Hogan. You were just like, brother. Oh God, yeah, no. On a similar vein,
Especially because it's like rural Minnesota. The guy used to work at a hot sauce shop in the Mall of America, and especially those dudes, the dudes that would come in like looking for stuff just to like have on the road or whatever, and be like, "Thanks, brother," and I'm like,
yeah,
"What's wrong for two very different reasons."
yeah, it's both of them extremely valid. For me, in a similar vein, whenever like I have a lot of like white women who call me sis online, and every single time I'm like, I'm gonna let you rock, but don't ever do that. For very
right.
simple sense of like intersectionality, I'm just like, there are alarm bells in my head right now. Just so it's not just the misgendering thing. It's like the racial aspect of it as well. But I'm just like,
the council is prepared to judge you for your crimes.
Literally, it's like the people of the global majority have deemed this unnecessary.
This goes against our community standards.
Clearly. Okay, well, we've technically been here for like an hour and 10 minutes. So we kind of stretched in half 0.5 what we were intending. But like, I'm so happy that we got to do this. It was wonderful talking to you.
It was great.
Yeah, like vibes. And I'm about to go and follow you on Instagram, which everyone else should also do right now. There's a banner right there. Gasp. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I'm usually a better dancer than this. But yeah, no. So like, absolute vibes. Thank you so much for like taking.
Oop. You go on. Oh, there we go.
I was flailing so hard that I just like clicked a random button on my computer, and it was like, I guess this is my time. Goodbye, world. Happy that wasn't something that was more long-winded, and I didn't just like leave you hanging there. But yeah, I'm so happy that we got to sit down and like talk.
Me too.
My like it's so refreshing too, because I get to talk a lot about like gender and sexuality and like fandom and like, but like when I'm constructing like concepts for like art and music, like I'm very much in there alone, like just digging my hands into things. So like this was such an enjoyable thing. But again, everyone, thank you guys so much for watching. I follow Sci Fi on every social, the Twitter,
the Twitter.
Follow her on the Twitter and the Instagram, and just all of the vibes. I believe that's also your YouTube right there as well, but who can tell with the with the thing. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching. There should be another trans talk coming up next week, which will be absolutely wonderful, and we're really excited for that as well. And if y'all, want to, let's see, where is this here? If you guys would like to show support to Sci Fi and show support to We Are Trans, you guys can tip us on Venmo at We Are Trans. I'm not sure if we have a Cash App. I think we do have a Cash App. Our Cash App, I believe, is also We Are Trans. Follow us on Instagram, which is We Are Trans, and follow us on Twitter at We Are Trans One as well. And thank you guys so much for participating. Sci Fi, thank you again. I'm gonna go stuff my face with some vegan empanadas. And yeah, I know, and they're like really, really good. They put like peppers in there. I'm too distracted. This is what we like. ADHD, autism, solidarity. It just doesn't. Like, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Like I'll be like stimming, and like you'll automatically know what I mean. So, all right. So we're just gonna wrap up and have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful night, everyone.